Okay, so have you ever, like, really thought about the possibility of outrunning aging?
Outrunning aging.
Yeah, like, what if I told you there are people out there, experts, who believe we're close, like really close, to breakthroughs that could seriously extend our lifespans?
Okay.
Maybe even, like, forever. Immortality and all that.
Immortality.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's kind of crazy, right? Like something of a movie.
It does sound pretty far out there, yeah.
Well, that's what we're diving into today, this whole idea.
Okay.
And we're doing it with Aragorn, it's Mr. Metaverse
Yeah,
online.
I know Aragorn, yeah.
He's a futurist, got some pretty bold predictions about how technology is going to mess with, totally change how we think about getting older and, death.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. Aragorn's always get his finger on the pulse of what's next, so to speak.
Totally. Now, I'm not saying we should all start planning our 200th birthday parties just yet,
Uh-huh. Great.
but Aragorn's ideas, they definitely get you thinking.
Oh, for sure. There's no doubt about that.
So let's unpack this whole thing, shall we?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Okay, so Aragorn's main point, right, is that technology doesn't just move forward in a straight line.
Yeah.
It's more like exponential, like it keeps speeding up.
Exponential, I see.
Yeah, and he makes this point about how slow things were for most of human history compared to, well, now.
Right.
Like, did you know that almost all the technology, all the scientific discoveries, like 99.999% of it, happened in, get this, the last 0.1% of human history?
Wow. 99.999%. That's a tiny sliver of time.
It's wild.
That really puts things into perspective.
And he uses this great example about the wheel.
The wheel.
Yeah, like humans were already farming, right, for like 6,000 years
Yeah.
before someone invented the wheel.
6,000 years. That's unbelievable.
It's crazy. And it makes you wonder, what are we taking for granted now that'll seem like mind-blowingly obvious in the future?
That is a mind-blowing question when you really think about it.
Right. And it all ties back to what Aragorn calls our linear bias.
Linear bias.
Yeah, it's like we look back and see these huge chunks of time as like nothing happened then, but really progress was slow, incremental, sometimes really, really slow.
Makes sense. We're hardwired to think in straight lines, I suppose.
Exactly. But now, with AI and all that, well, we're in a whole new ballgame.
We are indeed.
And speaking of AI, Aragorn says it's like the biggest reason for all this super fast progress, this exponential growth.
Okay.
And it's not just that AI can, learn and change. It's the raw power behind
That
it.
power, yeah.
The computing power, it's insane.
How so?
Like, get this, we could do 1,000,000 trillion times more calculations.
1,000,000 trillion.
Yeah, for $1 than we could back in, like, 1935.
Wow, that's almost impossible to wrap your head around.
Right. It's mind-boggling.
It really is.
And that massive computing power, it's like the engine behind this whole data explosion we're seeing.
The data explosion, right?
We're creating more information now every year than in, like, all of history combined.
It's true. The amount of data being generated is just incredible.
And all that data, that's what fuels what they call deep learning.
Exactly. Deep learning algorithms thrive on massive data sets. The more data they have, the better they learn.
Okay, so we've got all this data, and AI is using it to learn crazy fast.
Right.
But how does any of that translate to, actual improvements in healthcare?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right. Is this really going to help us live longer, healthier lives?
Well, the truth is we're already seeing glimpses of that future even now. Aragorn, in his talk, he highlighted some really interesting examples.
Well, yeah. Like what?
Like real-time language translation. Might seem kind of, ordinary compared to some of this other stuff, but for healthcare around the world, huge implications.
Oh, interesting. In what way?
Think about it. A doctor in, say, London could consult with a patient in rural Kenya, no problem.
Without a language barrier.
Exactly. Regardless of what language they speak, that kind of access could be huge.
Right. Like that could change everything for so many people.
No doubt. And it's not just language. Aragorn also talked about VR and AR, virtual reality, augmented reality.
Oh, yeah. He was showing off that stuff with Mark Zuckerberg, right? In the metaverse.
Exactly. And as out there as that seems, he made some pretty compelling points about how it could be used in healthcare.
Yeah, like what?
Well, imagine like a surgeon being able to see a patient's heart in 3D right there in front of them during an operation.
Whoa, that's wild.
Right. Or medical students could practice these super complicated procedures in a safe virtual environment before they ever even touch a real patient.
It's like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, all that virtual stuff. But honestly, The thing that really got me, it was when he started talking about, like, brain-computer interfaces.
Oh, yeah, that's some next level stuff.
Right. Like, he showed people playing games with their minds, actually playing. And there was even that thing with a Neuralink patient, playing Mario Kart just by thinking about it.
It's mind-blowing how fast that technology is developing.
Totally. But are we really talking about, like, mind control here?
Not quite mind control, no, but definitely mind interfacing.
Right.
And while it sounds like science fiction, the potential for things like, let's say, treating Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, it could be huge.
How? How could it even help with that?
Well, think about it. What if you could diagnose those diseases way earlier, like way before the symptoms even really start?
Okay, yeah, that would be huge.
Right. And that's what this technology could potentially do. AI analyzing brain activity, looking for those tiny little changes that might signal the very beginning of the disease.
So we could actually diagnose Alzheimer's, like, before it even really takes hold.
Potentially, yes. And not just diagnose it, but maybe even treat it more effectively or even prevent it altogether.
Wow, that would be incredible. But with all this talk about AI, I got to ask, what happens to doctors in all this?
Right. What about the humans?
Exactly. Like, if AI can diagnose us and maybe even treat us, do we even need doctors in the future?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Aragorn actually brought up a really interesting example on the webinar, something called Clara. Yeah, it's like this AI customer service agent that Salesforce uses.
Oh, yeah, I think I read about that.
And the thing is, Clara is available 247, speaks tons of languages, and handles customer questions like a pro.
Okay, but is that really what we want from our doctors? A chatbot, basically.
Not necessarily. I think it's more about changing how we think about the doctor's role. Just like AI is making customer service smoother, it could totally change how doctors work.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Like, imagine if AI could take over all the routine stuff. Things like analyzing test results, looking at medical images, even assisting during surgery.
Yeah, I guess that would free up doctors to spend more time with patients, right?
Exactly. They could focus on the really complex cases, the ones that need that human touch, that empathy, that AI, at least for now, just can't replicate.
So it's not about replacing doctors, it's more like giving them a superpowered assistant.
Exactly. AI becomes a tool, a really powerful tool that helps doctors do what they do best.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better about the whole AI takeover thing. But Aragorn doesn't stop there, does he? He takes it a step further into, like, immortality territory.
He does love a bold prediction, doesn't he?
Totally. He actually says that we could figure out, like, practical immortality by 2050.
2050, that's not that far off.
Right. It's like less than 30 years. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around. What would a world without death even look like?
It's a question that's haunted humanity for, well, forever, hasn't it?
I mean, it's one thing to think about curing diseases, which, don't get me wrong, that's huge.
Absolutely.
But living forever, that's a whole different ballgame.
It really is, yeah.
It makes you wonder about everything. You know, like, what happens to society, to the planet, if nobody dies?
Right, there would have to be some serious adjustments.
Yeah, serious adjustments. Like, what does it even mean to be human if you don't die?
Yeah.
It's kind of freaky when you actually start thinking about it.
Definitely makes you ponder some pretty big questions, that's for sure.
It does. But, you know, Aragorn did mention this one guy, Demis Hassabis.
Oh, yeah, from Google DeepMind, right?
Yeah, him. He said something like, we could probably cure most diseases in the next 10, 20 years or something like that.
It was a pretty bold statement, but Hassabis is a brilliant guy, and he's not alone in thinking that. There are a lot of really smart people who believe that AI could fundamentally change healthcare as we know it.
Yeah, and Aragorn definitely piled on the examples, like AI designing new drugs, treatments tailored to your specific DNA, even crazy new materials for surgical tools.
It's true, the pace of innovation in those areas is really remarkable. And Aragorn's point is that all of this is happening faster and faster, like exponentially faster.
Exponentially, that word again.
Well, it's the key to understanding where we might be headed. Because if Aragorn's right, and we really are on this fast track to a future where we live dramatically longer, healthier lives, well, that has huge implications for all of us, right?
That's huge implications, yeah. And I think that's what really sticks with me after watching his webinar.
Absolutely. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about what that technology means for us, for our future.
Exactly. And it's not just about living longer. It's about living better, healthier, without the fear of, disease and decline.
Right. And imagine a world without cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. It's a future worth striving for, isn't it?
It definitely is. And, whether Aragorn's predictions come true exactly as he sees them, or things unfold in ways we can't even imagine yet.
Of course, we can't predict the future with absolute certainty.
But the point is, the future of medicine is being shaped right now. And that's something that should matter to everyone.
Absolutely. These are conversations we all need to be having. What role do we want technology to play in our health and our lives?
Exactly. And what do we do with that extra time if we do manage to outrun aging? That's a question for another deep dive, I guess.
Sounds like a fascinating one. I'm in.
Perfect. Well, on that note, thanks for joining me on this journey into the future of medicine. It's been a wild ride.
My pleasure, as always.
And to everyone listening, keep those questions coming and keep exploring these amazing advancements. Who knows what the future holds? Until next time, stay curious.